Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome into Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson, in for Dave Bacon. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Cavaliers a little bit later on with Kevan, Arnold, as well as Cleveland Browns, talking with them. But we're going to start with last night. The Cleveland Cavaliers falling to the Detroit Pistons, 106-103. No Darius Garland, no Caris LeVert. But they did have Lauri Markkanen back. To recap last night's game following practice today, head coach J.B. Bickerstaff had this to say on the loss.
We'll be fine. You know, again, it's us paying attention to the small things and being mentally locked into what we need to go out and accomplish and understanding the type of game that we have to play in order to be successful. You know, I mean, say what you will. We missed 11 free throws last night. You know, we shoot an average number there, we win the game. You know, we take care of transition, you know, we win the game going away. So, you know, there is no pressure. There is no guys playing tight or weighted. You know, it's about execution at this point, and we got to do a better job.
And again, in order to talk about this more, we have Hayden Grove of cleveland.com. And Hayden, thank you for joining us. And, you know, when it came to the loss last night, it really felt like this was a game that the Cavaliers should have had, even without Garland and LeVert. But despite that, again, like what Coach mentioned there, the missed free throws being crucial in that loss, especially when you're losing by 3, missing 11 free throws.
Yeah, I think he makes good points, though. I mean, you know, again, it's just a situation where this Cavs team is young. They're going to have nights where they don't play as well. And I think that, you know, you're seeing that lately without Darius Garland, kind of the captain of their ship, and Caris LeVert going to be out for a couple of weeks. So, yeah, I mean, it's the little things. Also, last night, the last possession of the game, they had 3 wide open 3-pointers to tie it and missed them all. Sometimes that's just how it's going to go in the NBA. And I think if you had Darius Garland, you have a better shot of making those. So, you know, when your best player's out, it's tough. It's tough to win no matter who you are and who you're playing against. So he's right. No sense of panic. No need to panic. Yeah, it's a bad loss. It happens. You know, they were hoping to get healthy over the All-Star break, and instead it looks like they didn't get healthy at all. They got less healthy over the All-Star break. So I would just chalk that up to a young team that still has some experience, some growing pains. And I still think this Cavs team is just fine. There's no need to panic. Plenty of games left on the schedule, plenty of time to get healthy. You're looking at the postseason right now. You're not looking at, you know, a night in and a night out, have to win basis. So, yes, it's a disappointing loss, but you learn from it. That's every Cavs loss this season has to be a lesson. And I think last night was a good lesson. You know, do the things that you can control and you'll win the game. If you don't do those things, then you're not going to win the game.
Yeah, and especially, too, you got to remember, it's much like baseball. I know not as many games in the season, but it's an 82-game season. You know, you got to worry about, you know, the full 82, not necessarily dwelling on the one every single week and every single night. But, you know, with that being said, no Darius Garland last night. Had the back issue flare up again. He was out. And even Brandon Goodwin after the game was talking about, you know, not really sure when he's going to be returned to the lineup. But, you know, Hayden, for you, with it being a back injury for Garland, having the entire break, coming back, missing that first game out of the break, do you have any concern when it comes to Darius Garland going forward because of that back issue?
Apparently it was a bone bruise, so it's not like a soft tissue injury or something like that. No, I don't have a ton of concern. I think it's something that'll heal over time. You know, he was obviously able to play in the All-Star Skills Challenge and the All-Star game, so I don't think it's something super concerning. I think that they're obviously just going to take their time and make sure that, you know, they have him as healthy as can be going forward. But so, yeah, I'm not, if it was like a back strain or he strained a disc or pulled a disc or something, I'd be like, yeah, it's probably something that's going to linger. But if it's a bone bruise, I don't foresee that lingering too long. And, you know, just got to give it rest, unfortunately.
Yeah, and, you know, the other player that was out, Caris LeVert, newest Cavalier, was traded for before the deadline, and he's going to be out for a week, maybe 2, with a sprained foot. Now, Hayden, are you concerned at all when it comes to LeVert? Because at least from where I'm sitting, you know, with him being the newest Cavalier in, he doesn't have as much, you know, experience with these Cavaliers and knowing where these other players like to have the ball. So do you feel like there's a little bit of a concern there with him kind of getting used to playing with these guys?
No, I mean, yes, I think it would be good for him to be there, but I'm not concerned about it. I think, you know, Caris LeVert proved we can do before the break against the Pacers. I mean, he's a guy that can get you a bucket. And sometimes So the Cavaliers they have great defense, but sometimes they have trouble, scoring. So Caris LeVert was brought in to score. And I think he's going to fit in just fine. But the problem is, like you said, when they need a bucket, he's not there right now. So I'm not concerned about him long term. I think that they just got to get him healthy. It's unfortunate they kind of came out of the break as unhealthy as they have because, you were kind of looking to reload going into the second half. But better to be unhealthy now than unhealthy towards the end of the season. So I'm not worried about Caris LeVert at all. I'm not worried about this Cavaliers team at all. Again, they've defied every expectations they've had coming in. And I think it's been a magical season. And, they really haven't hit a rough spot, by any means. So for this to be their little rough spot, I think it's okay. And I think that they're going to hop right back on the horse and get healthy. And once they do, then you're going to see them click towards the end of the season, which is exactly what you need.
Now, the one thing I'll give JB Bickerstaff credit for throughout this season has been, obviously, they've dealt with plenty of injuries as a whole, but, the one thing that I look at is, getting these players back in, and the continuity of the lineup hasn't really been there like we saw at the beginning of the year. Now you're getting Lauri Markkanen back. Darius Garland, he missed a little bit of time with the back injury. Now Caris LeVert's going to be out for maybe a week or two. So do you look at this, at the way that JB Bickerstaff has handled this lineup? I really think that he should be commended even more so for the way that he's juggled not only the lineups but the rotations as well.
Yeah, I think last night there were some mistakes made by JB in terms of not challenging that foul and not having some better 3-point shooters in the game at the end of the game. But you're right. As a whole, it's been a great juggling act. He's been able to find good lineups, good situations, and I think as these guys are injured, you're going to have to do that more. JB's not going to be perfect. He's not the perfect coach. He's a great coach, and I think he could be an NBA Coach of the Year. But, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to have moments where, it's not always going to work out for him. So I think the most important thing for JB is just to keep his team, focused, keep his team hungry, keep his team in line. And I think he does a great job of that. So, yes, the lineups will come and go, and he's done a great job, and I think he'll continue to do a great job. But going forward, you're gonna see some issues. You're gonna see some things that he can do better, and he'll own up to that. And doesn't mean he's not the right guy for the job, and doesn't mean he hasn't done a great job for this team this year.
Now, while this has been a young team for the Cleveland Cavaliers, obviously Lauri Markkanen being the oldest member of the starting lineup at 24 years old entering this season. JB Bickerstaff talked about earlier today the importance of the veterans and Rajon Rondo and Kevin Love on this roster.
They're a priority no matter what. And that's why we were very conscious about the veterans that we went and got, this summer. Obviously, starting with Ricky, Ed, and then the transition to Doe, and already having Kevan. They mean the world to young guys. And it's something that I think that has been lost upon our league for a while now, because you either have, teams that are full of vets or you have young teams. And I think it's extremely important to have those guys through the ups and the downs, to put young guys in the right position and then have people that our young guys can lean on and depend on when the moments get rough.
Now, Hayden, with them coming down this stretch, this is the first year, hopefully of many, when it comes to this Cavaliers team. But, leaning on those veterans that they have on this roster, how crucial do you think they're going to be going down the stretch here, heading into the postseason?
Yeah, it's going to be crucial, as you mentioned. These guys are the guys that have been there. Rajon Rondo is an NBA champion, I think twice now. Kevin Love is an NBA champion. Ed Davis has been around the league for a long time. So these are the guys that are going to, navigate the ship. They're going to help they're going to help a guy like Darius Garland, who's got the wheel. They're going to help him to steer that wheel. They're going to tell him, what to look out for as he goes forward. So, I think that they're going to be very crucial. I think to have those guys bought in, especially a guy like Kevin Love, who's really had issues here in Cleveland with being all in and being determined. And he's had some issues with injury as well, but he's had frustration in the past. But I think him finding that role and JB Bickerstaff handling him perfectly well, I think that's going to help. And Rajon Rondo has obviously been there, and he's still getting ingratiated into this team. Of course, it's important to have those vets behind, a really, really young starting lineup. I think that JB makes great points and that you need balance. You can't have, the Lakers are kind of proof that sometimes you have too many vets and sometimes these young teams have too many young guys. I mean, that's kind of been the case with the Cavaliers over the last couple of years, just too many young guys, not enough veteran leadership. So, it's great to have a mix. And I think the Cavaliers have a really, really good mix here in Cleveland.
Hayden Grove and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, we're going to be hearing from a former Cleveland Browns quarterback on who is under the most pressure for the Cleveland Browns in 2022. Mac Robinson on Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. Former Browns quarterback Robert Griffin III on ESPN's NFL Live had this to say on who is under the most pressure in 2022.
I don't know if it's the deal that really puts the pressure on Baker, but I think Baker is under the most pressure of anybody in the league. He's got more pressure on him than Aaron Rodgers-Bowles did during his 12-day cleanse.
Oh, the cleanse is back.
Quite simple. That's exactly what it is. All right, so Baker needs disgusting. A Joe Flacco type of year. He needs to run the table and win a Super Bowl. Anything short of that, he's not going to get the public to buy in on him, and he's definitely not going to get the people in the front office to buy into him being the quarterback past 2022. But we got to realize Baker is also a guy that always performs his best when his back is against the wall and no one believes in him. He went from a walk-on to being a Heisman Trophy winner, and I believe he needs that kind of turnaround in Cleveland for anyone to take him seriously. But if he doesn't run the table and win a Super Bowl, I think we might have seen the last of Baker Mayfield in Cleveland after this next season.
I think that's a little bit extreme on the extreme side. But, I mean, hey, if anybody knows pressure, it's RG3 because, hey, no pressure, no diamonds. But in order to talk about that, let's go ahead and bring in Hayden Grove of cleveland.com. And, Hayden, I understand what he's trying to get at here. I understand that, you know, there's high expectations for Baker. But to say that he needs to win a Super Bowl or else that's it, I think is on the extreme side for Baker heading into 2022.
Yeah, that was a great reference. But yeah, I think that with RG3, I think he's right in that Baker Mayfield might have the most pressure on him in the NFL because the Browns are still in win now mode, and Baker is in his contract year. And if Cleveland brings him back, they're expecting a Super Bowl or a run to the Super Bowl. I disagree that a Super Bowl or bust is where we're at. I think if he has a really, really good year and takes them to the AFC Championship and they run into a buzzsaw in the Chiefs or the Bills or something like that, then, you know, I think that you can still make an argument to give him a contract. And I think the Browns would give him a contract. But he's right in that if they go like 10-7 and Baker plays okay, gets them there, and then they lose in the divisional round, you're still going to have a huge decision to make. Be it, you know, are you going to give Baker a contract, or are you going to play this year by year? Or do you need to go get somebody? I mean, there's already talk about the Browns need to go get somebody. So I think RG3 is right. I think Baker has a ton of pressure on him. I think this offseason he needs to find mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever. He's got to find a happy place. I think last year was traumatic for him in a lot of different ways. I think for the first time in his career, he really lost that confidence, that cockiness that he's had in the NFL and throughout, you know, his time at Oklahoma. I think he lost it, and he's got to find it because that's who he is. RG3 is right. Baker's the best when his back's against the wall. So if he goes elsewhere this season, if the Browns decide not to bring him back for this run, I think he'll have a great year elsewhere just because that's what he's always done. But he's got to find some sort of he's got to find just a center. I think everything last year was so much outside of him. And it happened with the shoulder. And then you have so much noise. You just got to bring it all in, find a center, and just, think about what he needs to do to be the most confident, happy, healthy, prepared quarterback that he can possibly be.
Yeah, and the other part of it too is that I can't remember the last time a quarterback that had an 8-9 record with the team is all of a sudden getting thrust into the Super Bowl or bust category. Like I don't really understand that category of it. But with that being said, though, people have been talking about who's going to be the Browns starting quarterback next year, and odds have been coming out. And this is courtesy of The Athletic. They have Baker as the odds-on favorite at -130, followed by Jimmy Garoppolo at +300. I disagree with that one. Kirk Cousins at +600, followed by Matt Ryan +1,800, Deshaun Watson +2,500. Then Menor native Mitchell Trubisky, 2,800. And then Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson at +4,500, with the rookies all the way at the back at +6,500. Now, Hayden, with that being said, I think that a lot of people are overestimating the possibility of bringing somebody in because I just don't think that the upgrade really is there that's, enough to move the needle for me. But on top of that, having to give up the extra pieces as well along with it, I just feel like Baker, being the odds-on favorite, I think this is pretty spot on for your opening day starter.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree I think that they actually will bring in a quarterback of some kind, not to replace Baker, but to push Baker. I think Mitchell Trubisky would be a great option for number 2. I think Teddy Bridgewater would be a great option for number 2. A guy to kind of sit there and maybe, give a little bit of veteran leadership, or better, not leadership, because Baker should be the leader of the offense and the football team, but just give a little bit of, kind of like a Rajon Rondo, where you're kind of there giving advice, kind of seeing what you see. Like Case Keenum did that, but I still think there was a part of Case Keenum that, really wanted to play and to start, and maybe wasn't the best backup for Baker. But anyway, I think they'll bring in somebody like that. And, you're right. I don't think Jimmy G's the guy. I could see Jimmy G ending up somewhere like Pittsburgh. I could see Matt Ryan on the move too. I could see Kirk Cousins. I don't think Kirk Cousins will go anywhere, but it just, none of these move the needle for me either. So I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah, and I think that of the names there, the possibility of bringing in Trubisky as a backup, I think, is probably the most likely of them. But, I've made the comparison before that I think Jimmy Garoppolo is basically like Instagram stunt food, where it looks good, but at the same time, it's really not healthy for you if you're actually indulging in this. But anyway, moving on, you had Jason La Canfora from CBS Sports. He went ahead and ranked 13 teams that need a franchise quarterback the most, and he had the Browns at 7, saying that if they didn't have the $18 million committed to Baker Mayfield for 2022, that they'd be looking at multiple options, and that he could see them doing something on day 2 of the draft because the Browns are stuck with the former number 1 overall pick. I disagree with the framing of that, but it's also important to keep in mind that he had the Browns ranked ahead of the Texans, who have Davis Mills, and ahead of the Lions with Jared Goff. So I think it's a little bit of an overshoot or an oversight when it comes to them being put up there. But I think that, a little bit. I think it's a little bit overblown, I feel, when it comes to, the narrative of being stuck with Baker at that point.
Well, I think it just goes back to the Browns having such high expectations because the roster that is around Baker. I mean, you had some really good players that around Baker Mayfield last year, and it didn't work out. I mean, Odell got out, Jarvis was hurt, Austin Hooper had a terrible year. Kareem Hunt was out for over half the games. I mean, it was on paper, it looked great. And then, then you add all that into it and it's like, oh, now what? So going into next year, yeah, you're going to have, the receivers unit looks really light, especially if Jarvis Landry is back. And you're going to have to add some receivers, but the roster is still there. The offensive line is still there. The running backs are still there. Hopefully Kareem Hunt can get back and get healthy this year. You have a defense that I hope can sign Jadeveon Clowney again because they need that edge. You have some young up and coming players, Jacob Phillips, Greg Newsome had a great year last year. You want to see those guys continue to develop. JOK. So I think because of where the Browns are at roster-wise, I think that's why teams are that's why people would say, well, they need a franchise quarterback, because you could argue that Baker Mayfield was the biggest reason they didn't perform last year and didn't get to where they wanted to go. So if you put in Russell Wilson right away, they'll be back at the top, or you put in Aaron Rodgers right away, they'll be back at the top, which I kind of agree with. But I still think Baker can play to a really high level, maybe not the level of an Aaron Rodgers, especially in the Kevin Stefanski offense, but I think he can play, to a level to where he can get to where they want to go. So I think that's probably why people would say, the Browns need a quarterback, because they're right there. And if Baker performs better last year, I think that they get back there again. So Baker needs to have a good year this year. There's no doubt. And I don't know, we'll see if he does, but or if we'll see if he's even back at all. So it's going to be very interesting.
Hayden Grove and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, we're going to go to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, figure out if the Browns can take a lesson from their former head coach, Bill Belichick. Mac Robinson in on Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. We're going to go out to the voicemail of Truth and Reason and figure out if this caller wants to see if the Browns can take a lesson from former Browns head coach Bill Belichick.
Hi, this is Jerry. I'm a lifelong Cleveland Browns fan, and I think that my comment is we can learn something from Bill Belichick on how he handled New England's issues in two key positions the Browns are having issues with. At defensive tackle, he took a big kid from Alabama in the draft who has turned out very nicely for him. It's a big kid from a big program. And at the slot receiver position, although I really like Jarvis Landry, if you look at what Belichick did with Wes Welker, he let him go, and who took his place with Julian Edelman, another star receiver. So I think the Browns could learn a lesson from Bill Belichick. Thanks. Have a good day.
And, of course, thank you for the voicemail. Appreciate it. You guys can always leave your thoughts at 216-200-6650. But, when it comes to the Bill Belichick side of this, I think the other interesting part is to look at what he did on the defensive side. Richard Seymour, now going to be going into the Hall of Fame, traded him in the late 2000s as well, moved off of him before he had to give that contract extension. And then also Chandler Jones was another player who played very well for him. They moved him on to Arizona at that point and able to move up Jamie Collins a little bit after they drafted him. But in order to bring in Hayden Grove about this one, Hayden, I know the Jarvis Landry situation. I know everybody, loves Jarvis, but at the same time, it comes down to the business decisions. Do you think that the Browns end up bringing back Jarvis Landry? And what do you think is going to end up, or what did you make of the entire situation earlier this week?
Well, I think that they'll bring him back if the price is right. I think that Andrew Berry operates in a very cutthroat, kind of way in terms of finances and in terms of how this organization is going to operate. I think that everybody in that building has immense respect for Jarvis Landry. I think everybody in that building wants Jarvis Landry back. I think everybody in that building has an appreciation for what Jarvis Landry has brought to Cleveland. But at the same time, Jarvis Landry wants to get paid because he's been a veteran and he's been around and he deserves to be paid, and the Browns don't want to pay him. So if they can come to some sort of an agreement to where, okay, we'll cut your salary or we'll renegotiate your contract, and Jarvis is okay with that, then that's okay. But I could very well foresee Jarvis saying, hey, I want my money. I've been around this league. I've sacrificed a lot. I've been injured lately. Like, maybe if I have one more injury, this could be over for me. So I got to get paid. I could see that happening. Or the Browns, I could see them maybe being like, Jarvis, you've given us so much of your heart and your effort and your time. We want to, compensate you well, and we want to make this fair for you, and we want you to be back. So I think there's a middle ground there. I think they could bring him back, but the one thing that I think Andrew Berry has done specifically very well is draft. He's done very well in the drafting. And the Browns could find a slot receiver in the draft. That could absolutely happen. They could find a defensive tackle in the draft, which I think they're going to need to do. They're going to need to find multiple tackles. So if the Browns do get rid of Jarvis Landry, I do have faith that Andrew Berry will find a way to draft some really solid receivers. And the one thing that Andrew Berry hasn't been so great about is, free agent signings. Yes, they're getting their targets, but when they get here, it just isn't working. Austin Hooper hasn't worked. Jack Conklin's been hurt, although he has, I would say, worked. John Johnson was kind of a disappointment last year. So some interesting free agent signings. Obviously, Jadeveon Clowney, I think, was great. So maybe not. Maybe it's not that he hasn't done so well. Maybe it's kind of been hit or miss. But I have confidence that he can draft some really good talents and use the Bill Belichick method of maybe not giving these guys long-term huge extensions and drafting guys to replace these guys that are going to leave.
Well, the other aspect of this, too, and I think you're spot on when it comes to the right price for Jarvis Landry, because you look at some of the players that they're going to have to keep around as well. You have, the Denzel Ward extension looming, and you already have, you mentioned him, Jadeveon Clowney. He's going to be hitting free agency this year, so you're going to want to make sure you have enough money to be able to pay him. And, NFL.com actually put out their article of 5 players who should stay with their current team and mentioned Jadeveon Clowney especially, and saying that, look, don't forget, just a year ago, he looked like he was done. Now, next to Myles Garrett, he reached 9 sacks for the first time since 2018. So, for the Browns, I think that if you save a little bit of money when it comes to the Jarvis Landry situation, and by no means do I want Jarvis Landry gone. I want to make sure I put this out there. I don't want him gone. I like Jarvis Landry, but if you're able to use that money to put it next to a great running mate next to Myles Garrett, I think you kind of have to.
Yeah, you're right. It's about, that's what Andrew Berry's doing here. He's finding the ways to keep the money to where he needs to go. And Jarvis Landry, while he is, yes, the heart and soul, no doubt, 100%. But, do you want to overpay a guy that's probably heading towards the end of his career? Has started to have injuries that he never had before. It's nothing against Jarvis Landry. It's really not. It's not a personal thing. And Jarvis Landry would say the same. It's a business, and the Browns are operating as a business. So, yeah, if you want to save money and you want to sign Denzel Ward to a long-term extension, and you want to sign Jadeveon Clowney to a 2-3-year deal to keep him in Cleveland, and then, say Baker Mayfield does have a great year next year, you want to have money to sign him, for the future. I mean, there's got the money. There is a salary cap. There's money that has to go around. So there are creative ways for them to keep Jarvis, I think. And, I think there's some other players we're not thinking about cutting right now that I think could be cut. So Jarvis Landry, I think it would have to be a renegotiation, and I think they would love to have him back. But if Jarvis thinks that, it's not enough, then I get it, and you move on. You're not going to be able to keep every single player in most cases. It's the reality under the NFL, and it's what keeps the league parity, or what was supposed to be parity. But it keeps that parity and keeps the league competitive.
Well, the other side of this, too, is another player that I'd love to be able to keep is David Njoku, because CBS Sports, they put out one free agent each team needs to retain this offseason, and they had David Njoku on here saying that Rashard Higgins, Jadeveon Clowney warrant new deals, but obviously at different prices. But with the Browns needing new wideouts and Clowney while replacing Clowney with a cheaper alternative, Njoku still has upside as a pass catcher. I think David Njoku is coming for a breakout season next year. Obviously, was he one of the younger players in his draft, but the other side of this too is, when it comes to the franchise tag, I could see them utilizing that on him, because tight end is the second lowest in the league, only above a punter and a kicker. And I don't think that we're going to be tagging Chase McLaughlin. I'm sorry to spoil everybody, but I don't think that's coming for you. But David Njoku at $10.8 million, that's a little less than what you're paying Austin Hooper to begin with. So I think that could be something where you bring him back at least and make sure that he's in Berea, and then you can work out an extension with him at that point to make sure that he's sticking around for the long term.
Yeah, I think David Njoku has had a remarkable turnaround. I mean, I think I do have to remember that he was one of the you mentioned it, one of the youngest players in his draft, and had to do a little maturing, had to do a little growing. Wasn't a blocker, couldn't catch the football, just was an athletic specimen. And you had to kind of work with him. He had to develop, and he's done that. And I think he had some off the field immaturity things with his agents and wanting to be out of Cleveland and not wanting to be out of Cleveland, this and that and the other thing. But now I think you're looking at him. I truly believe him when he says he wants to be in Cleveland. And I think the Browns should want him in Cleveland. That article is great. He has a tremendous upside as a pass catcher, especially if he continues to work at it. I think as a run blocker, he's been a lot better as well. So if you told me 2 years ago, I would have said the Browns, I want to keep David Njoku, I would have said you're crazy. But because of the growth he's made, because of the leaps he's taken, because of the maturity he's gained, I am certainly on board with David Njoku being a Cleveland Brown for, quite a while going forward. And, looking forward to seeing who he can be, because I think he can be a really special player.
Hayden Grove and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, we're going to be talking NFL draft and who could potentially be projected going to the Cleveland Browns at number 13 overall. Mac Robinson in on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. We're going to go out to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for this listener's draft strategy for the Cleveland Browns.
So, last time I talked to you guys, I wanted the Browns to draft, in this order, Drake London, Carson Strong, Cole Turner, and Romeo Doubs. The reason why I wanted the Cole Turner and Romeo Doubs is because, if you remember, last year, the Bengals drafted a receiver that their quarterback was already familiar with. He turned out to be very good, and how'd that work out? The reason why I want Carson Strong, and I want him to sit for a year, is because the Browns always throw their quarterback in the first year. How's that worked out? So, like I said, he'd be familiar with those two guys because they were already on his team. Besides the fact that everybody is 6'2" to 6'5". We need bigger players. I wouldn't mind, drafting Garrison, but I got a feeling Garrison will get hit and hurt within the first year. They're just too small. I wanted bigger players. And I would just address the defense in the draft, and then pick some players later. That's all I had to say. Thanks. Bye.
And again, we always appreciate the voicemails on the voicemail of Truth or Reason. You guys can call it the number down below. But, I think that it's important to remember Joe Burrow was the number 1 overall pick. Jamar Chase was the number 6 overall pick. We can't lose sight of that. The fact that both were top 10 picks in back-to-back seasons. Jamar Chase was one of the top receivers in college football. Romeo Doubs, again, I like him a lot. He's a day 3 guy, And you're dealing with Carson Strong, who you want to sit for a year, when most years, at least now in today's NFL, really don't get to do that all that often. So let's bring in Hayden Grove. And Hayden, I know it's an interesting draft strategy, and it might be the new fad that people are trying to put together now that he's had the success of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. But I think that when you're trying to pair together these quarterbacks and receivers, I just don't think that it's a great strategy overall, though.
I mean, yeah. I kind of, if you want to look at a quarterback that has a great relationship with the receiver, look at Baker Mayfield and Garrett Wilson. They went to the same high school. Baker's been watching him for a while. He's known about this kid since he was at high school and in high school at Lake Travis. So if you want to pair a receiver with the quarterback, I would do it with Baker and Garrett. That's what I go with. I wouldn't worry about, day 3 guys, day 2 guys, and a quarterback in Carson Strong that could very well be, a late bloomer himself. So the Browns are in win now mode. And I'm not someone that I really don't want a young quarterback to come in and to be the guy right away. I think that Cleveland did a great thing in drafting Baker number 1. Whether it's worked out or whether you believe it's worked out or not, drafting that quarterback number 1 was important. It set the tone. That's your guy going forward. Yes, you wanted to sit him for a little bit with Tyrod Taylor. I get that. Things worked out. He had a great first season, and struggled in the second season, but things worked out for those first 3 years. You know, at least you had a direction. When you have a quarterback that you draft later in the draft, it's like, should we play him? Should we not? You know, it is what it is. With Baker Mayfield, you had a direction. That's your guy. You put your chips in that stack. Let's go. I love that option. The Browns haven't done it. Baker Mayfield is the first #1 quarterback the Browns drafted since Tim Couch. I mean, that's way too long between quarterbacks. You know, the Browns have had numerous #1 picks, numerous top 5 picks, and they didn't pick a quarterback. So I'm not a fan. If you're going to draft a quarterback, I'm not a fan of doing it late. You know, yes, you always pick one late and it'll work. It could work out. Look at Tom Brady. But at the same time, I mean, you know, I just like the idea of having a guy that's a top 10 guy. Go from there. Don't worry about, you know, the likelihood of you getting a quarterback that's a franchise changer late in the draft is way less than, you know, having one at the top. I mean, it's just the reality of the situation.
They call it the exception to the rule for a reason. It doesn't always happen every single year. You're not always going to get a Russell Wilson. You're not always going to get a Tom Brady. So it happens once in a long time. So I completely agree with you. If you're going to take one, you're going to take him high, and that's going to be it. But I'm glad that you mentioned Garrett Wilson, because Bleacher Report actually mentioned every team's dream draft target, and they actually went ahead and mentioned Ohio State's own Garrett Wilson, saying that Garrett Wilson could aid the Browns in righting the ship. The Ohio State star is one of the more unique receivers in this draft, and he showcases the ability to turn every play into a home run during his time with the Buckeyes. And, you know, Hayden, I think that I look at this receiver class as basically a choose-your-own flavor, pretty much. You know, you have guys that are bigger in Drake London that can be your red zone threats and have big playability. And then you also have the Jameson Williams, who obviously is dealing with injuries. But, you know, Garrett Wilson seems like he could be a great fit here in Cleveland.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson's a guy that, as the article said, the measurables might not be there. He's not as big as some of these guys in the draft. He's not as strong, but he plays big. He plays very big. He has an amazing catch radius, got long arms, can make every catch in the book. You know, you saw it. You saw it throughout the year last year with Ohio State. I mean, and you have that comfortability with Baker Mayfield. If you bring it back Baker Mayfield, you know, they're going to have an opportunity to connect. So I am all in on the Garrett Wilson train. I think he's the best receiver in this class. You know, it's just I understand that people don't like the Ohio State thing. I get it. Trust me, I understand it. Just because he went to Ohio State doesn't mean he's good. But having watched him, you know, a lot last year, I think he'd be a great fit for the Cleveland Browns. And that's not to say Drake London wouldn't be a great fit too. Maybe, you know, I'm not Andrew Berry. I'm not the Browns scouting staff. I don't sit there and watch hours of tape on these guys the way that they do. So if they feel like there's something on Drake London, if they have an interview with Drake London, they think Drake London is the guy, great. If they think the kid from Alabama or from Arkansas is the guy, great. If they think Jameson Williams is the guy, great. But I think that just having watched a lot of Garrett Wilson, I could see him being a very, very good piece for the Browns. So I'm all in on the Garrett Wilson bandwagon. I have been since the beginning. I've been tooting the Garrett Wilson is better than Olave horn for, you know, pretty much the entirety of his 3 years. And, you know, it's nothing against Chris Olave, who's also a great receiver, but I just think Garrett Wilson's special.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. Now, I would say this. I'm a big Treylon Burks guy out of Arkansas. So, like I said, everybody has their flavor, and I like Garrett Wilson a lot. Personally, I just love Treylon Burks. But, you know, we had this voicemail, Truth and Reason, who had mentioned a different possible draft strategy or different draft target for the Cleveland Browns.
I was just calling in today to see what y'all would think about the Browns drafting defensive tackle Jordan Davis out of Georgia University, because as I watch his film a little bit, I'm not too deep into it, but man, his film, he looked like the second coming of Vince Wilfork, and somebody like that on the defensive line with Myles Garrett and maybe Jadeveon Clowney, if they can resign him, or whoever they get behind them out, man, Jordan Davis looks like the truth at defensive tackle.
Now, granted, the fact that the Browns only have Tommy Togiai and Jordan Elliott coming back on the defensive line, I love just about anybody on the defensive line, but somebody like Jordan Davis then could be an interesting addition on this line.
Oh, my God, yeah. I mean, that's a guy that I would not have a problem with that at all. I mean, I would think that he would go earlier. But yeah, I love that idea to have a massive defensive line with Jordan Elliott, with Davis and Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett. I mean, my goodness, that would be special. You have JOK roaming around behind those guys. That's going to be a special unit. So yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I mean, I think if the Browns go in the defensive direction, I have no problem with it. I mean, that's the two biggest holes in the Cleveland Browns right there. The defensive line and the wide receiver position. So I have no problem with them addressing either. I really don't. I think that would be awesome if they drafted Davis. I mean, a remarkable talent, national champion, had some Heisman votes, I believe. So I can see him being kind of like an Ndamukong Suh, maybe somebody like that who can make an impact. So interesting and exciting to think about that possibility in Cleveland.
Well, not to mention, too, he got a few rushing touchdowns, so he might fit on the offensive side, too, at that point.
There you go.
Hayden Grove.
Yeah, he can vulture somebody from Nick Chubb.
Hayden, thank you so much. Appreciate the time. Thank you for coming on with me today, my friend.
Absolutely, man. Great job. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Hayden Grove of cleveland.com. Special thanks to him for joining me. But coming up next, we're going to be talking with Kevan Arnold, host of the Voice of the Land podcast, talking a little bit of Browns and who could be some buy low candidates for the Cleveland Browns in free agency. Mac Robinson on Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson, and let's go out to the voicemail of Truth and Reason because this caller has an interesting perspective and an interesting way of fixing the Browns' quarterback issues in his mind.
Hi, this is Mark from Cuyahoga Falls. I think that Browns fans should all contribute about $1 billion and buy an adamantium skeleton for Bernie Kosar so he can come back and save the Browns next season.
I'm not going to lie. I did not expect to hear Wolverine Bernie Kosar basically getting brought in. But, you know, in order to talk about that, let's bring in Voice of the Land podcast host Kevan Arnold. And, Kevan, when it comes down to it, I feel like Bernie Kosar would have a little bit of an advantage being able to, you know, utilize the claws of his hands to be able to, you know, stick the ball and get a little bit of a better grip.
Yeah, I mean we're both Marvel fans, so I mean like that's one heck of a pool of an idea for the voicemailer reason. But I mean everybody's trying to figure out the answers at this point, and this is kind of where we're at. We're, you know, fans like that, whether he's having fun or being serious about it. I mean, yeah, it's sure fun to imagine it. I'm sure the MCU would do a great job of putting that together in a movie scene, but in real life, we know that that's not reality. And the Browns are going to have to figure out this passing game, and it's not just everybody just thinks you find the quarterback and where you change the quarterback or the quarterback gets healthy that's going to solve everything. Or if you just get a wide receiver, that's going to solve everything. There's a little bit more that has to go into it for this Browns team to improve on their passing game from last year into next year. Injuries are one thing. Players got to step up. And yes, you do have to add some talent because there might be some talent leaving out the door of Berea in this offseason as well, just because it's a business and you can't keep everybody.
Well, Kevin, I mean, who knows? Maybe we can call into Sam Raimi, see if he can go ahead and add him into Multiverse of Madness at this point. But, you know.
The only way the Browns are going to win is right now is like it feels like in the multiverse. So,
yeah,
you know, again, the MCU would do a great job with that story, but Browns have to do it themselves and in this actual reality. And they gotta figure it out this offseason.
Oh, of course. And I'd pay to see that reality. But also, too, sticking with the Browns, you know, again, maybe a little bit of a cheaper option, not having to chip in $1 billion. But, you know, PFF had their buy low candidates for free agency coming into this offseason. And, you know, under quarterback, obviously people have been mentioning it. They mentioned Marcus Mariota as a potential low-risk option to potentially bring him in. And then when it comes to wide receiver, we're looking over at Allen Robinson as a potential candidate when it looks to, there we go, getting a chance to see him, you know, playing with below average, I think, is kind throughout his career. He played with Bortles, Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles. Go back to college, he played with Christian Hackenberg, who couldn't even make it in the AAF. So, you know, Kevin, when it comes to some of these guys, would you look to try to bring in somebody like an Allen Robinson or, you know, even a Marcus Mariota in a backup capacity behind Baker Mayfield going into 2022?
Yeah, I was kind of interested to see where the conversation with Mariota was going to go. Back up, yes, to maybe push him if you want to do that. You know, that's, you know, where is Baker's mindset at from a player standpoint? Does he still feel like it's his job? If you are going with Baker as your one and Mariota to kind of be that backup and maybe push Baker a little bit more, I'm not taking Mariota over Baker Mayfield. That's for sure. I mean, unless you guarantee me before he even steps foot on the field out there, the practice fields in Berea and the field at First Energy Stadium, that he's going to be a better option than Baker Mayfield, then all for it. But I don't see Mariota as a better option. If we're going to change quarterbacks, it's got to be a better option. In terms of Allen Robinson, heck yeah, I would take Allen Robinson. And we know that wide receivers, whether through the draft or through free agency, are going to be connected, or a lot of these pro football talk and all these draft grades, all of these free agency wires for Bleacher Report and everywhere are all going to say that this wide receiver is a good fit for the Cleveland Browns. Why? Because we need wide receivers. This wide receiver in the draft is a good fit for the Browns. Why? Because the Browns need wide receivers. So that's kind of one of the main positions this offseason that is going to be talked about and linked to the Browns. And a guy like Allen Robinson, I would, if you could get him on the cheap, I would definitely take a guy like that here in Cleveland.
Now, CBS Sports put out one free agent that each team should be prioritizing signing in free agency. And for the Cleveland Browns, they had DJ Shark, possibly him coming to Cleveland, obviously coming off of the ACL tear, but saying that he's got the ideal size and, you know, he'd be that well-rounded weapon who could possibly blow up for the Cleveland Browns at that point. And, Kevin, I'm not going to lie. I think that, you know, obviously with him coming off the injury, I think that for him, I think the price tag might be a little bit too much. And especially with him coming off the injury, I'm just not sure if Andrew Berry's going to want to, you know, take a chance on somebody like that.
Yeah, the price tag's too high. Andrew Berry's definitely not taking a chance on something like that. If you can get him on a deal similar to what they gave to Jadeveon Clowney, a prove-it type one-year deal to allow him to kind of come into the team and show what he can bring after the injury, how he's been able to rework his body and get himself into, you know, rehab and get into the proper shape to go out there and play. And we just kind of mentioned it, Mac. I mean, another wide receiver linked to the Browns. And I did hear your reference when you mentioned his name, and you know, that might be something fun for the fans to latch on to, because I know a lot of people in Cleveland, a lot of fans in Cleveland always like the kind of those chants or something fun with a player like that. But a player like that is not coming here, like you said, unless the price tag is right for Andrew Berry. And you can say that that's a thing against analytics or whatever. It's still a business, and this team wants to make sure that they have next year in mind, but also not hampering themselves for maybe future years. This whole LA Rams, is that 1 year and done, going all in and getting rid of all your draft picks and all your money? Maybe it's sustainable. Andrew Berry is going to try to balance, still taking advantage of the championship window, but he's not a guy that's going to overspend for someone like Chark, who's coming off of an injury.
You know, you mentioned the names. I think that's why a lot of fans like Sione Takitaki when they drafted him as well. But Kevan Arnold and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, we're going to get his reaction on the Cavaliers' loss to the Pistons last night, as well as the team chemistry and possibly with Caris LeVert being out for a week or two. Mac Robinson in on Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Throughout his life, Call and Post editor W.O. Walker was a nationally respected spokesperson for African Americans.
Most American people are beginning to feel that anarchy and crime is beginning to take over the nation, that there's a growing disrespect for law and order, and therefore no one is safe even in their own home.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson, and Cavaliers ended up falling last night, but let's get this caller's reaction on the voicemail of Truth and Reason on the Cavaliers' loss.
Hi, Mac. This is Ron Byer. The All-Star break turned out to be positive and negative for the Cleveland Cavaliers. The positive, a few days of rest and much-deserved recognition of the effort so far this season. The negative, they seemed to lose the rhythm of the game last night. Hopefully they get that back quickly with their upcoming homestand. Last night's loss hurt, but with injuries to Garland and LeVert, Laurie Markham back after 11 days off due to injury, Brandon Goodwin and Rajon Rondo did a great job stepping in. I have great confidence Coach Bickerstaff will have the Cavs playing at the level needed headed into the playoffs.
Now let's bring in Kevan Arnold of the Voice of Land podcast. And, you know, Kevan, obviously disappointing loss last night. But, you know, for me, I looked at it and thought that, you know, the biggest difference was, you know, those missed free throws that they had, missing 11 free throws in a 3-point loss really could have swung the game.
In a lot of losses this year, Mac, it's been at the free throw line. I know a lot of fans wanted to go to a couple of the calls at the end, the Okoro foul on Cade Cunningham specifically. Last night, where he kind of just looked like he fell down, and any player that falls down, especially late in the game, it seems like they're going to get that foul call no matter guy moves his feet or not. But it's more so at the free throw line. You're getting points when the clock is stopped, and you're given a chance. There's a reason why they call them free, because they're free points for you to go out there and get. And guys should be able to go out there and knock them down, or at least knock them down when it counts. And these are the tests, because this team is in a, you know, they're trying to make a run for the playoffs, and that's kind of where you get the first step of playoff experience. The lights getting brighter, every game starting to matter even more. Yes, it's an 82-game season. You can say every game matters. There are certain ones that matter a little bit more, especially when you're in a stretch run and a run where you're kind of right there in the middle of the East. You could fall, like only a couple games going to the top, but a couple games falling down into that play-in set between 7 and 10. So the Cavs need to find a way, and hopefully this is their adversity to wake them back up. The targets have started to shift to their backs because people started to wake up. Eyes started to open to what this team was doing. They need to respond, but if the injuries keep happening, that is going to be a very tough task. As good as JB Bickerstaff is, as good as this culture is, you know, it might be ahead of their time this year if the injuries, they can't get a hold of those and get their guys back on the floor.
Well, with that being said, Bleacher Report had an article earlier today talking about one word to describe each team. And with the Cavaliers, they had close. And basically saying that the Cavaliers, they've gotten out to this start. This is their first year into it, but they're close to being in that contention type of a window. And when I was thinking about this, my thought was ahead, because I feel like this team, they're ahead of schedule. Obviously, you have a lot of players like Evan Mobley who came in. I thought he would play great as a rookie. I did not expect this at all, where I think that, you know, he could be on that all-defensive NBA team, I think, at this point this year. But, you know, Kevan, what's one word that you would use to describe this Cavaliers team for this season?
Patience is what I would say. And maybe that's more so for the fans, but it just seems like they never get too far ahead of themselves. I know what you're saying with the word ahead, and I apologize for getting ahead of you on that for your word there, Mac. But yes, they are ahead of schedule, but it just seems like there has been this calmness or patience with purpose element to this team all year long. And, fans starting to jump back on the basketball bandwagon after a rough Brown season. This is a football town, but the Cavs starting to play well. Even the casual fan started to tune in a little bit more. Now they're seeing them go through a little adversity, and it feels like the world is falling down. The sky is falling down on Cleveland fans again. Fans need to have patience because the team has patience and the organization has patience with these young guys getting the experience on a nightly basis. Now that you're past the All-Star break, though, the attention to detail and tenacity is what is going to define this team. So moving forward, my word would change to tenacity. You got to have that tenacity, that energy, that heart out there on the floor, because you don't have the best player in the world, but you got a collection of some pretty good talent out there on the floor that are learning to play together, and you're going to have for a while. So patience turn to tenacity and purpose moving forward.
Kevan Arnold of the Voice of the Land podcast. You guys can check it out as always. Kevan, thank you so much for joining me today, my friend.
Always a pleasure, Mac. You are doing a great job, and I appreciate you asking me to come on and join you today.
Of course. And like I said, guys, make sure you go ahead and check out the Voice of the Land podcast. But each week, the Ohio Lottery recognizes role model students from across Ohio. This week, we head over to Aurora High School, where senior Cody Curbo is not only one of the best wrestlers in the state, but a leader in the classroom and the halls of Aurora High School. The Ohio Lottery's Partners in Education program is proud to honor Aurora's Cody Curbo, this week's Shining Star.
Watch Aurora's 113-pound wrestler Cody Curbo on the mat, and one word comes to mind: relentless. Curbo just never seems to stop.
If I'm wrestling you, what do you want me to say when I am done wrestling you?
Just kind of that I wear you down, and I pushed it all on you, and you really had nothing left to give.
More often than not, that has to be the reaction of his opponents. Cody has been so good in his senior season, most of his matches have been over early. He presents a lot of challenges on the mat.
On my feet is definitely my strength, just because I can use my speed. And I've been hand fighting a lot more this year, which helps me get to my attacks a lot more.
His foot speed and his hand speed, just overall quickness it's tough to beat. Like I said, wrestling IQ is really high, and his motor. We're working on getting to be able to wrestle. Right now he's having a hard time because he's wrestled probably 7 full matches all year, so his conditioning is a little, but we're getting there. In the next 2 weeks, he's going to be tough to beat in Columbus.
Columbus is something that has had a motivating effect for Cody all season. He finished as the runner-up in the state at 116 a year ago, losing by a single point in the championship match. He's working hard to change that result this season.
Cody should have been a state champ last year. That one still bothers me, but he's the same way. He comes in every day, works. Cody doesn't say much. I walk in, he's got the same grin on his face. He's ready to work. High wrestling IQ, put a lot of time into the sport. He's a 2-time Fargo All-American.
I don't want to give up because, I kind of saw that as, not a failure, but, to me, I kind of, failed to my ending goal. So at that point, it was I don't want to feel that again, and it's my senior year, so it's my last chance. Knowing last year that I would have one more chance, it was a little different, but I don't want that outcome again.
Curbo brings that same determination and discipline he shows on the mat to the classroom and his academics. He's a solid B-plus student and takes as much pride in his academics as he does his wrestling.
Growing up, ever since I was young, it's always kind of been put on me it's academics first. If I don't do good in school, I'm not going to have sports around, but I've never really been to that point of struggling. So, I've kind of put it on myself to get good grades and really do all that first before putting wrestling on myself.
The accountability and discipline have paid off for Curbo. Next year, he'll head to the University of Pittsburgh, where he'll wrestle for the Panthers.
I really like the coaching staff as a whole. I really felt I had a good bond with them when I was out there on my official and all the talking that I had with them, and the team as a whole. I mean, I have a good connection to one of the guys out there. I knew a lot from like growing up and wrestling in club stuff, and then like meeting all the guys. I really enjoyed meeting them, and just I like the campus as a whole.
Wrestlers spend so much time taking care of their bodies and training, dealing with bumps, bruises, and sprains. It's not a surprise that Cody plans on going into the medical field.
I want to go into nursing. I just really like medical-based stuff. I mean, I'm not a big wanting to do surgery and having somebody's life possibly on my line, but I like being around that. I mean, I know male nurses are kind of a high need right now, so I really like that aspect of it. And I don't know, over the past few years, I mean, it's become a high interest for me.
Cody's been one of my favorites since he was a little guy. You know, I was an 80-pound freshman. Cody was an 80-pound freshman. Yes, I was an 80-pound freshman. You know, he's grown into it, and you know, he's put his work in. He wrestles all summer, but that smile he always has on his face is what I'm going to remember.
If you know a student who deserves recognition, we want to hear about them, and you can nominate them completely online. Go to OhioLottery.com. Find the About section. Click on Partners in Education. There you will see links to nomination forms. Nominate that student as an academic all-star, and they could end up being featured as our next shining star.
And congratulations to Cody Curbo as well. That's going to go ahead and do it for us today here at Sports4CLE. Coming up on Monday, you're going to get back Dave Bacon, as well as have Tim Bielek and Brad Ward as your scheduled guests. Thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate you for having me here on Sports4CLE. Talk to you later.